What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. As always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Today we're here to start my re-sign, let go, and prediction series for the Green Bay Packers free agents. For each of the Packers free agents, we'll devote an episode to each one of them. We'll go through and highlight why the Packers should bring them back, why the Packers might let them go, and then we'll make a prediction. But before we do all that, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work, including the article versions of what we're discussing here today, over at ESPNLacrosse.com and my Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers fans. Download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. All your Wisconsin sports radio needs in one place. So like I said, we're going to kick off this free agency preview series. We're going to start with linebacker Isaiah McDuffie, and this is my third year doing this specific series, and it's my goal to put myself as best I can, and again, best I can, into the Green Bay Packers mindset, into the Green Bay Packers shoes, in terms of what their thought process might be when it comes to making these decisions about each free agent. So I want to devote time to each respective category, right? Why might they re-sign this player? Why does it make sense to do that? Why does it make sense to let them go elsewhere in free agency? And then I make my prediction. So be sure to comment what your prediction is for Isaiah McDuffie. Do you think he's a Green Bay Packer in 2025? So let's start things off with why the Green Bay Packers would re-sign Isaiah McDuffie. For one, during this 2024 season, he was a key figure on the defensive side of the ball for the Packers. Played 728 defensive snaps, second most at the linebacker position, behind only Quay Walker. And even though as the season progressed, we saw Edgerrin Cooper's emergence at the linebacker position, especially later on in the year, McDuffie became that third linebacker. He still had that defined role within Jeff Hafley's defense. Within Jeff Hafley's 4-3 scheme, Isaiah McDuffie was the third linebacker when the Packers were lined up in their base defense. He was the strong side linebacker with Quay in the middle, Edgerrin Cooper as the weak side linebacker. So he had a defined role in this defense even as Edgerrin Cooper was emerging throughout the second half of the year. Where McDuffie is at his best as a defender, it's against the run. His ability to shed blocks, to fill gaps. I think he has underrated speed in terms of his ability to go sideline to sideline, to cut ball carriers off, to shoot those gaps. All those different elements that are an important factor to being a good run defending linebacker. In addition to that, he's an incredibly reliable tackler. So we have that defensive side of the equation, right? Then there's the special teams. He's been a core special teams contributor during his time with the Packers. During this past season, he played 146 special team snaps throughout the year, and he did so across 5 different phases. There's 6 total special teams phases throughout the course of a game that can pop up. Isaiah McDuffie was contributing to 5 of those. So he was a very, very key piece to the Green Bay Packers special teams unit under Rich Bisaccia. In the season before, in 2023, he played 222 special team snaps. Again, it dipped last year because he had a larger role on defense, but I think the real thing to take away from that special teams contributions is the number of different phases. Again, there's 6 of them in total. Isaiah McDuffie was helping out on 5 of them throughout the course of the season. Now, I've said this before. If Isaiah McDuffie is your third or fourth linebacker in your linebacker room, which ended up being the case late last season, I think you have a pretty good linebacker room. He's a special teams contributor, as we just highlighted. He has a defined role in Jeff Hafley's defense. Again, the strong side linebacker where they're lined up in their base defense, seeing the field 20-25% of the snaps each game. That's Isaiah McDuffie's role. He does a good job at it. In addition to that, if an injury strikes and you need someone to come off the bench to fill in and be a starter for a few weeks, you trust Isaiah McDuffie to go out there and do that, to provide you with that starting presence, knowing that he's going to steady the ship, so to speak, in that regard, right? In addition to that, the coaches throughout the season, Hafley, Anthony Campanile, the linebackers coach, who's now Jacksonville Jaguars defensive coordinator, they speak so highly of Isaiah McDuffie. Campanile said he's what's right with football, referring to Isaiah McDuffie's toughness. I think it was between the San Francisco and the Miami game. They played San Francisco on a Sunday, then turned around and played Miami at home on a Thursday. McDuffie left briefly during the San Francisco game with an ankle injury. He ended up returning and then finished out the rest of the game. That Monday before a Thursday game, I don't know that any of the coaches thought that they were going to have Isaiah McDuffie available for the Thursday game. But he ended up gutting it out, ended up starting, ended up playing significant snaps, had a pretty good game as well. And again, I think just that sequence, that, behind the curtains peek of what went into McDuffie getting himself ready to get out there and then still going out and executing at a high level, that's what the coaches see. That's the commitment, that's the effort that the coaches see. And we hear about his practice habits. Every single rep is 110% on the practice field with Isaiah McDuffie. Preparation-wise, same exact person each week in that regard. So I think it's just my guess, right? I think if we asked Jeff Hafley, hey, do you want Isaiah McDuffie in your linebacker room? I think he would absolutely say yes for all the reasons that we just mentioned. All right, so now why might the Packers not re-sign Isaiah McDuffie? Well, we talked about what he brings to the defense. In the passing game was an area where he was targeted by opposing quarterbacks. Last season, in the pass game, Isaiah McDuffie, when thrown at, quarterbacks had a completion rate of 85% when targeting him. Gave up 10.5 yards per catch. On the 64 targets that came his way, there was very little ball production. No interceptions, only 3 pass breakups, and the cumulative passer rating of those quarterbacks was 129.6. It's a hefty amount. And particularly, we saw this during the Detroit game, the second Detroit Lions game of the season. And Jared Goff, that offense, that's a unit that their bread and butter is attacking the middle of field. But in that game specifically, Isaiah McDuffie was targeted 14 times just in that one game. Gave up 2 touchdowns, 140 receiving yards in that game. And again, that's an extreme example, right? We're not going to judge any player on their absolute best of best performance. We're not going to judge any player on their worst of worst performance either, right? It's the cumulative body of work that they've put together. But I think that is an example of one reason, not that game, but the collective numbers, as to why the Packers could potentially look to add or go in a different direction, I should say, at the linebacker position. Because if McDuffie is going to be your 4-3 base linebacker, while yes, when you're in that alignment, you're often going to be prepared to defend the run. But if that player is going to be on the field for, again, 20, 25, 30% of the defensive snaps, the Packers might want some added coverage ability to come with that. Because again, even if you're in your 4-3, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to run the ball. It's still a passing lead. The Packers may want a more robust coverage element when they're in their 4-3 base alignment. Now, having said all that, if the Packers are going to move on from Isaiah McDuffie, let him test the market, let him go elsewhere, the next reason, I think, would be the real reason behind that. Not to say that what we just talked about isn't true, not to say that there isn't the opportunity to gain more coverage ability from your third linebacker spot, but for all the reasons we mentioned at the start of this, I think that carries a lot of value, right, in what Isaiah McDuffie can bring to your defense, to your special teams unit, all those different elements. But I think this is the real reason why the Packers would move on from Isaiah McDuffie, Tyron Hopper. They spent a third-round pick on Tyron Hopper in the 2024 NFL Draft, and in his first season, he contributed quite a bit on special teams, saw very, very, very few defensive snaps, and if we were building out the linebacker depth chart last season, Tyron Hopper, he was 5th, right? He was behind Isaiah McDuffie, behind Eric Wilson on that depth chart. So now as Hopper enters year 2 of being in the NFL, we know Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper in 2025 are going to be your primary linebackers. They're going to be your nickel linebackers. But in order for Hopper to continue to grow, he needs that opportunity to grow, right? He needs the reps. And that doesn't just mean in-game. It means the practice reps, right? It means being the third linebacker, the Sam linebacker, when the Packers are lined up in their 4-3 base defense. It means having those reps against the the Packers offense, their number one offense in practice. He needs those opportunities to grow. And if you're going to bring back Isaiah McDuffie and you're going to sign him to a 3-4 year deal, whatever it might end up being, if you're going to devote that cap space, not that I expect him to break the bank by any means, but that's more cap space that you're devoting to the linebacker position if you bring back McDuffie than if you just were to rely on Hopper And again, that could potentially extend the learning curve for Tyron Hopper, because just generally speaking, if Isaiah McDuffie's still on the team, if you re-signed Isaiah McDuffie, you're expecting him to contribute, right? You're expecting him to be that third linebacker next to Quay Walker and next to Edrin Cooper. Well, that's less opportunities for Tyron Hopper that he needs, like any young player needs, to go out there to grow and to go out there and to develop. And I think the other side of this is if the Packers want McDuffie back, but are going to have him be linebacker 4 behind Tyron Hopper, there's more opportunity out there for Isaiah McDuffie, right? He can go get a larger contract, I would guess, from another team who wants him to play a larger role. So I think that if Isaiah McDuffie isn't back, I think that's what ends up being the big reason why. It's because the Packers invested a 3rd-round pick just last offseason in Tyron Hopper, and they want to give him the opportunity to go out there and grow, to get those reps. Meanwhile, Isaiah McDuffie, he can probably go get more playing time, could get a larger contract from another team than he would in Green Bay if he's linebacker 4 on the depth chart. And just to throw this out there, I think one team to watch would be the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just hired Campanile, Packers linebackers coach, to be their defensive coordinator. So Tyron Hopper, his presence, I think, would be the real reason why the Packers would not re-sign Isaiah McDuffie. So now it's prediction time, and I have a guess that you know which direction I'm going to go with this, but my prediction is that Isaiah McDuffie signs elsewhere. For really the big reason we just highlighted. The Packers invested a premium pick, a top 100 selection in Tyron Hopper. They want to see what he can do. And you don't truly know what he can do until, like we said, gets more opportunities. It's more opportunities in practice. It's more opportunities in games to, one, showcase where he's at, but also to have the opportunity to take that next step, to gain that experience, to take his game to another level. And like I said, Isaiah McDuffie, I think there's more opportunity for him out there elsewhere in terms of contract value, in terms of contract length, in terms of playing time with another team. So I think that's really, like I said, going to be the catalyst behind the decision. Investing multiple years salary cap space from the Packers perspective into a player who I think you ideally, because right, you want to see Tyron Hopper grow, who ideally would be your 4th linebacker. That's just not going to be a priority where they're gonna devote that capital, right? The years, the contract, the cap space, all of that. So I think Isaiah McDuffie ends up signing elsewhere in free agency this offseason. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Might as well hit like, might as well hit subscribe on the YouTube channel as long as you're here. Hope you enjoyed the video. This is what we're going to be going through for the next couple weeks now as we work our way through each of the Green Bay Packers unrestricted free agents. And like I said, comment below, what do you think? Will Isaiah McDuffie be a Green Bay Packer in 2025? So find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers Radio. Everything you need. Until next time, friends, take care.